Ryan Nobles from CNN standing by right now. Ryan, good morning.
Bill, good morning. Thanks for having me on. Happy New Year, my friend.
Were you a part of that pot party they did New Year's Eve?
No, I was in Florida all last week.
Okay, just checking.
With the president, actually, New Year's Eve, Bill, I was in Miami watching our Buffalo Bills clinch their first playoff spot in 17 years. So
oh, that's awesome!
I can't complain about my New Year's Eve plans.
No, you cannot. That's awesome. We were in Miami last year for the New Year, and it was 85 and sunny. You were in Miami this year, and what was the temperature?
It was like 65.
Yeah, it was cold.
So, yeah, it was chilly, but the priest, when I went to church Sunday morning, said, "Welcome to Alaska."
Yeah, yeah, they have no idea, right? All right, so I do want to get into boy. There's so much to talk about. Let's start with the president, Kim Jong-un, basically saying, "I've got a button on my desk." Now the president's saying, "Well, my button is bigger than yours." What? And it's a Twitter battle going on right now.
Yeah, I don't know, and I'm sure there's a lot of people that look at this as potentially the worst case scenario when it came to President Trump and Kim Jong-un, that they're perhaps two big, powerful leaders who have egos that are enormous as well, and they could get into some ugly showdown that could potentially lead to a catastrophic war. And, I don't know how much stock we should put into what the president says on Twitter, but my goodness, if he's literally threatening to fire a nuclear weapon at a country in a peninsula with millions and millions of people that are there. I mean, I have to imagine that this is a lot more hyperbole than it is actual fact, that he understands how awful something like that could be. And, if you kind of get past the rhetoric on Twitter, there is some signs that there's actually progress being made, that North and South Korea may actually meet before the Olympics, and that the leader of South Korea would certainly like to forge some sort of diplomatic breakthrough, which may be even more important than what Donald Trump has to say. But man, this is the stakes are as big as it gets in this situation. And when you have a president that is going on a forum that can be seen all around the world and basically threatening to press a nuclear button that could lead to millions and millions of deaths, you really can't ignore, how dangerous that could possibly be.
Here's the scary part, and I'd love your take on it, is it doesn't seem that there's any way at this point to stop North Korea from becoming nuclearized. It seems like it is inevitable because, China is probably the only one that could come in and really and maybe stop it from happening, but I don't think they can. It looks like we're on the path, yet Nikki Haley is coming out and saying it will never happen. We will not allow it to happen. What does that mean? So I can only think of one way to stop it from happening, and that is not a good way.
Right, and that would be through military force, right. Well, here's the thing. There's American leaders for the past 3 decades have said that they're not going to allow North Korea to nuclearize, right? This isn't the first administration that has promised that it's not going to happen. And somehow, despite the fact that they've been choked off economically, they've been choked off physically, it's almost impossible to get in and out of North Korea. They continue to proliferate nuclear weapons, and they certainly seem to be getting closer and closer to it every single day. I agree with you. I don't see a scenario where they don't end up with a nuclear weapon. I guess the question is, how are they capable of putting that nuclear weapon in a position where it could do harm to people? And it wouldn't be that difficult because they, are so close to one of the biggest cities in the world in Seoul, South Korea. So I do agree with you, but I just can't imagine that the better alternative is to take some sort of military action against Kim Jong-un, because the thing about him is, if he goes down, he's not going to be afraid to go down and take everybody with him.
Yeah, it seems that way.
To find a way to strategically remove him from office seems, very, very difficult. And here's the thing. You have to look at this from a broader perspective. So it's not just this kind of wacko despot that's in charge of this country. Both China and Russia in the last 2 weeks have been accused of sneaking oil into North Korea. So they talk a good game on a global stage, saying that they, too, want to prevent this from becoming a bad thing. But then, there are reports from credible sources saying that they're still finding ways to get resources into North Korea. So do both Putin and Xi, do they both kind of view the North Korean problem as a good thing for them in terms of what it means for the United States and that part of the world? I mean, I just don't think that you can trust those leaders when it comes to this. So if you're talking about getting into a war, the way that plays that self out, is that perhaps China and Russia are on the other side of that war.
Politico put out a story that I had, we talked about last hour, 10 must-watch candidates of 2018. And here in the 22nd Congressional District, Anthony Brindisi is brought up, a Democrat that they say could possibly, certainly put up a good fight with the Congresswoman Tenney. What do you think? Obviously, she voted for the tax bill. There's a lot of talk over this last couple of weeks as people reflect, saying, "Oh, this is going to be a huge Democratic wave during the midterms." I got to tell you, it almost seems like for the Democrats, it's too good to be true right now. If this tax bill begins to start to benefit Americans, won't you think that will have a positive effect for Republicans?
Well, here's the thing, Bill. Both Republicans and Democrats have taken a huge gamble. They've rolled the dice when it comes to this tax bill.
Yeah.
And Democrats have painted the tax bill out to be, death, destruction, and the end of the world. It's going to put people in the streets. It's going to rob people of social programs. It's going to, balloon the deficits, and it's going to make life terrible. And, the hyperbole with what the tax bill was going to look like before it was passed was huge. So the perception of the tax bill is that it's going to be awful. And I don't know. I think there's part of me that thinks that even if it's marginally better, it looks even better than it actually is because the Democrats have set it up to be such an enormous failure. Yeah. I don't think, and I've said this many times, what people think of the tax bill before it goes into effect means absolutely nothing by 2018.
Right.
What's going to matter is what each individual person sees, and if by April these withdrawals start to have an impact and you look at your paycheck, and you have more money in your paycheck every month, even if it's $30, you're going to feel better about this tax bill.
Yeah.
And I think, but on the other side of that, the question is, will the benefits of the tax bill happen quickly enough for Republicans to take advantage of it in 2018? At the end of the day, every single American is going to view this in their own homes. They're not going to view it from what the corporate fat cats are getting. They're not going to view it from what perhaps somebody who's in a different tax bracket, how they're impacted by it. They're going to look at their tax bill, they're going to look at their withdrawals from their paycheck, and they're going to say, this either is good for me or bad for me. And that could have a big impact as to whether or not they vote Republican or Democrat in 2018.
Talking to Ryan Nobles from CNN, there's also the question of where is the president? Where is his approval rating? Where is the economy? Right now, the economy is booming. So where does this – and the economy is booming, and the president is still – at the lowest level that we've ever seen any modern-day president when it comes to approval rating. Although there is one Rasmussen poll out there that says it's not as bad as you think. How much does the president play a role in all of this?
I think he plays an enormous role. I mean, I think any Republican is going to have the president attached to them like an appendage, which could be good or bad. But here's the thing about Donald Trump, which I think that people don't put enough stock in. The volatility in his approval rating can sometimes be a benefit to him because it has the potential to yo-yo in a very quick fashion where, other presidents, have to take time to build a popularity. And on the other end of it, they have to take time for it to fall apart. And I think Donald Trump's the type of politician where one good thing or one bad thing could potentially send him skyrocketing and could send him in the other direction. And I think the thing about Donald Trump that people always forget is that people have an opinion about him, and you feel strongly about him one way or another. And sometimes that can be a benefit because it evokes passion out of people. And I just think sometimes people take that for granted, and that's part of the reason he got elected president, 2 years ago.
I just think it's wild. Bill, we had talked about this leading up to it, whether or not you'd be able to do your taxes on just like a simple index card. But how crazy is it that we don't know at this point whether or not we're positively or negatively impacted by? I guess I'm assuming we're positively impacted. But if everyone knew they were getting an extra $500 a year or whatever the number is, and they did a poll, I'm sure his numbers would jump 10, 15 points.
Yeah, Jeff, that's such a great point. But I think it shows how difficult tax reform is, how complicated it is, how we've created a system where, every single person is so uniquely impacted by the American tax code. I've got 4 kids. That's different for me than it is for somebody that doesn't have any kids. I'm married. Some people aren't married. I own a house. I don't own a house. All those things impact the tax form in one way or another. But to your point about that, Jeff, no, most Americans are probably not going to be able to file it on a postcard. But the fact that they raised the standard deduction, and I do believe that this is something that not enough people are paying attention to. In the past, it always seemed better if you owned a house, if you had a bunch of kids, if you had a sizable charitable donation. It was always better to itemize.
Yeah.
The fact that they've increased the standard deduction, that means that there's going to be millions of Americans that are just going to take the standard deduction, check that box, and be done with their taxes. Not have to pay a CPA, not have to go through finding all of their tax forms and everything like that. I do think that's maybe an understood part of this plan. Now, you're not going to make that, the benefit where it makes your life easier before the midterm elections in November.
Right.
But this time next year, as we're all right now gathering together all of our stuff for our 27 tax return, and you realize that it's so much less work, that might make you feel better about the tax bill as well.
Yeah. All right. Final question, Ryan, if I could. The Bills, they win this weekend. It's the Patriots. Do you think the Bills could beat the Patriots? And they say it's always tough to beat somebody 3 times, but I don't know. The Patriots are tough. What do you think?
Well, obviously, they got to get past Jacksonville first, Bill. I mean, I'm worried about McCoy being there in Miami. I mean, he was carted off and did not look good. I think that even if he didn't break that ankle, but, his ankles are so vital to his game. I don't see how he's ever going to be 100%. But, Bill, being a Bills fan as long as I have, I just don't see a scenario where the Bills ever get past the Patriots if Tom Brady is the quarterback. And that will likely be the scenario if they win on Sunday. But, hey, hope springs eternal.
Yeah.
I have to tell you, I was walking out of Hard Rock Stadium in Miami on Sunday afternoon. It looked like all hope was dashed. And I heard a huge cheer come up from the stadium that was about 500 yards away from me, and there were a bunch of Bills fans in the concourse watching the game, and I got a text that the Bengals had scored a touchdown. So, hey, Bill, maybe this is the year. Everything's different now.
I can tell you, it was with, 2 minutes left, 2:30 left, whatever it was over. It just looked like it was over. And then they just,
12?
holy cow, it was. But listen, after all these years, the Bills are here. By the way, starting the season off, what do you think the odds were that the Bills would make the Super Bowl? The odds starting the season off.
They were probably like 250 to 1.
The odds were 100 to 1 that the Bills would make. That's the beginning of the season. What do you think the odds are right now that the Bills make the Super Bowl? It's 160 to 1. It's worse than it was at the beginning of the season. So there you go.
It's not, is it?
It is.
It's 160 now?
160 to 1.
Oh, my.
Versus 100 to 1 at the beginning of the season.
I do have to say the one thing I've been so incredibly impressed by, and I did it too, was the way that the Bills fans have responded to Andy Dalton, the quarterback of the Bengals, and his foundation.
Yeah.
I saw last night that they've raised more than $170,000 for his foundation, for fans from Buffalo just finding a way to say thank you to him for winning that big game. And most people donating $17 to represent the 17 years the Bills went without a playoff bid. So that's pretty incredible. It shows how great people from upstate New York really are.
Yeah, that was really cool. All right, Ryan, we appreciate it. We'll talk to you after the Bills win next week.
All right, go Bills, guys. Have a great week.